So let me say something that some people get a little nervous when you talk about things like meditation. I'm going to say something even worse than that. So if you're about to embark on a long project, you might ask yourself the question, how do I know this is the right idea, right? If I'm going to spend years on this project, how do I know it's the right thing? How do I know I'm going to stick to it and get it done? So I came up with this thing that I sort of facetiously called the cry test, which is just imagine you're in a very safe place with somebody you care a lot about, you have a very intimate relationship with this person, you're very comfortable with them, and you start explaining to them what this project is that you want to do, right? If you're not in danger of breaking out in tears, not even necessarily in sadness, not even necessarily breaking out in tears, but having some involuntary upwelling of emotion, right? If that's not going to happen in that kind of situation, this probably isn't a project that you're that committed to. Because to do a really long project, that drive needs to be very deep. It needs to come from your core, right? If it doesn't, then what's going to happen is you start working on this thing. 6 months later, oh, I have a really neat idea for a game. It's got a grappling hook and stuff, right? That sounds neat. And then you start working on the grappling hook and stuff, and it turns out to be harder than you thought, right? And not as good as you thought. And 6 months later, you're like, well, what if I had a jetpack instead, right? And it'll just go like that, right? You'll drop one thing and pick up another thing and drop that thing and pick up another thing in a chain because you're not that committed, right? To succeed in a long and difficult project, there has to be love in the idea. And I don't, in English we toss around the word love all the time, like I say, I love pizza or something, but I don't mean that, right? I don't mean I love this idea as in, oh, it's such a great idea. I mean, I love this idea in the way that if I don't do it, I'm going to feel like I'm not doing the purpose of my life, right? It has to be that strong. So the problem is that most people don't know how to find something that strong in game development. You certainly don't get taught that in school, so at least not any school I've ever seen. So I just encourage some deep introspection. Just ask yourself what you really care about, really, because usually that answer will be very different from, usually if you ask yourself, what do I care about, you'll come up with some answer. And then if you ask yourself, really? Is that really what I care about? Not really, right? It's usually some kind of politically correct answer that we tell ourselves. If you iterate on that, if you keep asking yourself what you care about, and not accepting the previous answer, you just ask again, eventually you may get to something that you really care about.